So for the cat organs, we're just going to go down the list to make sure we're seeing everything, starting with our digestive system. First bit's the oral cavity, literally just the opening in the mouth, all of this open space here. Then on the roof of the mouth, we have the palate. There's two regions to the palate. Up towards the front teeth, there's this much sort of harder, bonier region. That's your hard palate. On people, if it's you make a t or a d sound, that's where your tongue's hitting the roof of your mouth. Back towards the throat, we have this much softer portion of the roof of the mouth. That's the soft palate. If you make a k or a g sound, where your tongue hits the roof of your mouth, that's your soft palate. Gingiva, those are all the cat's gums. So if we sort of pull his lips up, anywhere the teeth fit into the soft tissue, that's all gingiva. All right. The tongue itself, pretty obvious. This cat's tongue's kind of crooked. Here's his tongue. Ow, his teeth are sharp. There's his tongue there. We can see on the tongue there are these bumps. Cats have that sandpapery tongue. We call those bumps the papillae. All right, those are not the taste buds. The taste buds are in between them. Underneath the tongue, kind of pick his head up a little bit, there's this tissue that attaches the tongue down to the bottom of the mouth. That's the lingual frenulum. All right, and if I kind of wiggle it, you can see the tongue moves as well. Yeah. From there, we have the vestibule. The vestibule, if I can just put my probe, it's everywhere between the lips and the teeth. So I can just kind of run my probe into the cheeks, around the teeth. This is all the vestibule of the cat. Then we have our parotid salivary gland. It's our large salivary gland. So here's that masseter muscle. And here's our salivary gland right here. It's sort of this gushy, really sort of soft tissue right at the base of the ear. This is going to make a lot of the cat's saliva. And then it's going to run up, or the saliva is going to drain from this gland in a duct that runs over the masseter. So this really sort of faint line right here, this is our parotid duct. It's going to drain the saliva from this gland all the way up, 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 up into the corner of the cat's mouth. So it'll come out right here. There's another salivary gland, our submandibular salivary gland. Remember, mandible is the jawbone, so we just kind of follow it out. We get this mushy salivary gland right next to our jugular. This is our submandibular. And they're next to each other. They have a pretty different look to them, to one another, though. From there, we're going to look at our esophagus. The esophagus is the tube that brings food from the mouth down into the stomach. It's right behind the trachea. So here there's this big, rigid tube, looks like a garden hose. That's our trachea. The esophagus is just to the side and behind it. It's more of a flattened muscular tube. So this is our esophagus. It runs from the mouth all down the chest cavity. We can actually see it continuing behind the lungs and the heart. Here's the esophagus there. The esophagus will eventually hit the diaphragm, and it has to pass through the diaphragm. So this opening where the esophagus passes through the diaphragm, that's called the esophageal hiatus. Hiatus literally means break or hole. So it is the break in the diaphragm through which the esophagus passes. While we're here, here's the descending abdominal or thoracic aorta. It also has to pass through the diaphragm, and so the aorta itself has another hiatus. This is the aortic hiatus running through the diaphragm. So back to our esophagus. We follow our esophagus past the diaphragm. It runs behind the liver here and ultimately meets up with the stomach. So this is our cat's stomach. The end of the esophagus is right here. Where the esophagus and the stomach meet, right up here, there is a thick muscular ring. That's a sphincter that controls flow of substances between the esophagus and the stomach. Call that the gastroesophageal sphincter. Literally means gastro, stomach, esophageal, esophagus. It's the sphincter between the stomach and the esophagus. So if you push, you can feel how it's thicker and more muscular. If you open the stomach up, you can actually get your probe all the way in there. And so I can pass it through so you can see there's the probe. I put it in the stomach, but now it's moving the esophagus there. So I'm through the sphincter. With our stomach, a couple of regions to see. It's got this sort of curved J shape. This is the outside, inside. The inside is this smaller curve. This is our lesser curvature. The outside here, much larger. This is our greater curvature. The stomach has a couple different regions. The region right where the esophagus dumps into the stomach here, we call this our cardia or cardiac portion. The majority of the stomach, this sort of big open space, is called the body. And then this end bit where it sort of loops around, this is called the pylorus or the pyloric portion. Finally, there's also this curved top portion that's a little bit higher than the esophagus. That's the fundus. Open it up on the inside. We have lots and lots of these bumps. These sort of really deep, thick folds in the stomach are called the rugae. And then ultimately, we're going to pass out of the stomach into the small intestine through one more sphincter. I've cut it open. You can see this thicker muscular wall right here. This is the sphincter right at the pyloric portion. We call that the pyloric sphincter. All right. From there, we've now entered into the small intestine. The small intestine is all of this thinner, really sort of tangled up tubing. The first portion of the small intestine is specifically the duodenum. It is this much sort of straighter portion of the small intestine. From the duodenum, then we go into just sort of all of this sort of tangled mess. This is our jejunum, and then finally our ileum. Our ileum is our end portion. The easiest way to find the ileum is to just kind of look around your intestines, and then you'll get to a point where one intestine runs into the side of the other. This is the end of our small intestine. This is our ileum. And it actually runs into the side of our large intestine. So instead of kind of meeting end on end, they come together like this. So this last portion of our small intestine, that's our ileum. Then it meets up with our large intestine here. The first portion of our large intestine, it's this little sort of nub that hangs over right here. This is our cecum. There is another sphincter that's right where these two intersect. So where the ileum and the cecum meet, right here, there's another thick muscular ring. That's called the ileocecal sphincter, literally for ileum to cecum, there's a sphincter. From there, we go into our large intestine. I'm just gonna hold that off to the side. Our cecum was here, and we can see it's got this sort of curved loop shape to it. All right. From the cecum, we have a small portion of our large intestine that goes up towards the head. That's our ascending colon. Then there's a portion that crosses the body from right to left. This is our transverse colon. Then we've got large intestine coming down the body. That's our descending colon. All right, and then finally, this last bit where it's entering back into the pelvis and will ultimately exit the body, that's our rectum right there. All right, so there's our intestines. Associated with our digestive tract, we have the liver. This is our liver, this big organ right below the diaphragm, this sort of purpley color. The cat liver has 5 lobes. In the very, very back, there's this little lobe right here. This is our caudate lobe. All right, so it's actually right at the back body wall. That leaves us with 4 other lobes. 1, 2, 3, 4. These lobes are named for whether they're on the right or the left, or if they're medial or lateral. This is all the way off to the side on the cat's right side. This is our right lateral lobe. On the right side, but more towards the middle, is right medial. Left side towards the middle, this one right here, that's our left medial lobe. And then left side off to the side, that's our left lateral lobe. All right, so left lateral, left medial, right lateral, caudate. Above the liver, we have this clear sheet of connective tissue that's holding our liver up to our diaphragm. That's our falciform ligament. Stuck into the right medial lobe, there's this green sort of sac. It's generally going to be deflated on your cats. This is the cat's gallbladder. All right. The gallbladder and the liver work together to make and store bile. Bile is ultimately going to be ejected into the duodenum, so we need to find a couple of ducts. I'm going to turn this cat around now so that we can see that a little better. If I pull the liver up, right away I can see a couple of sort of green tubes. One is coming off from one side from the gallbladder. This is our cystic duct right here.